What up, watch peeps? I love wildly successful Kickstarter campaigns. It means the creator is on to something to stir up such interest. With the recent explosion of all these high-end Japanese brands, it's cool to see these same design philosophies brought to more affordable watches. I am, of course, talking about the Namica Shirahama, so let's check it out. I'm Pete, and we are Chillin' with Watches. Wrist check. I am wearing the Seiko SPB 147. I am still totally enamored with this watch. Seiko just did such a great job with these SPB reissues. But we are here to look at another watch that has, maybe some of the same design language to it. This is the Namica Shirahama, and check out these beauties. I think both of these are super fun. The white, very summery and bright, but I am kind of partial to this blue. But the colors, oh, the colors. They come in all sorts of fantastic colors. Besides this blue and this white, there's a white with a black and white bezel. There's also this cherry blossom pink dial that looks spectacular. There's a couple Neo Tokyo purple dials, but I am absolutely in love with the Neo Tokyo kanji dial model. So Charlie, if you're watching, there's any way we can make that happen. All right, so what are we looking at here? We have, these are 40 millimeters at the bezel. The case, I measured it at about 39, but if you look, the case actually is wider at the top than the bottom. So that 39 I measured would be at the very top at its widest point. And these were, on their Kickstarter, they range somewhere in the like 350 to 400-ish, depending on which dial and color combo you picked up. I know if you were lucky enough to get in on the super early birds, they were like $299 or something. Now this blue model in particular kind of reminds me of, there's a Squale model, don't ask me the reference because I don't know it, that has this kind of blue and white bezel, blue dial, orange minute hand layout. What we have is kind of like a basic Submariner style dial layout, triangle at 12, you got your rectangles at 3, 6, 9, dots everywhere else. I love these kind of big, thick minute and hour hands. You got an orange minute hand. Is always welcome. I love that on any watch. And I like this bi-colored seconds hand as well. As you can see, it's blue, white at the tip, and that white tip just really stands out against this blue dial, and I think that's part of what I like about this. But the other thing I like, and you probably heard this from other reviewers, is their less is more philosophy. You're looking at this dial, there's just no dial text, there's no date. You simply have that kind of embossed logo there at 12 o'clock, and I think that's just such a cool, clean, and fresh look. Now the crystal is, again, one of my favorite crystal profiles, a very low, slightly domed sapphire crystal with AR on the inside. From this view, you can also see this awesome kind of multi-grip bezel, has kind of knurling spots and then ridges, so super easy to use and manipulate. And this bezel action is awesome. It's kind of that notchy bezel action. If you're familiar with like a Helson or an Armada, it's very precise feeling. It doesn't feel springy. It just kind of snaps into each notch and just kind of sits there. Really great bezel action. All right, let's give the white model some love here as we talk about this case. I love this white dial. It's just so stark white. I don't think I have any other watch quite like this. And you can see on this one, the minute hand is white and the tip is in black. So it, again, stands out against that dial. But what we're here to talk about is this case, which is bead blasted all the way around. Gives it a really nice matte look. You have this offset 4 o'clock crown. Nice kind of low crown guards that don't interfere with the use of the crown at all. Still very easy to get a hold of and manipulate. But these case sides is what I think is really cool. As you can see with the case back and everything, it's kind of almost like a rounded look here. So very comfortable and soft on the wrist. And then it gets wider as it gets higher up towards the bezel. So on the wrist, it's taking up less real estate, but it presents and wears like a 40 millimeter watch to me. And one of the things I love about this watch is the lugs. And this is how crazy watch design is. This extra little turn and angle in the lugs there just makes these things magical. They go from cool to awesome. And that's the little things that, design can really impact the overall appearance of a watch. I just think they look really great. Kind of have this kind of cupped profile in the mid case, your lugs sticking out there. and a 6.3 millimeter crown. Flipping over to look at the case back, has a really well done case back. You have a wave pattern all throughout. Again, another design element that's very prevalent in Japanese design. And in the middle, you have what is called the Shirahama signature seal, which is kind of like a bit of their brand identity. Looks very cool. From this angle, you can also see that the end links are female and they are solid. They drape right away on a bracelet with nice, short, fully articulating links. Doesn't bend backwards on itself, but in the direction you need it to bend, has absolute articulation. Now this bracelet tapers from 20 at the lugs down to 18 at the clasp. Again, you have a very nice milled out clasp, solid all the way through inside the scissor. And again, that 2-button safety fold over that I just really am a big fan of. And you got 3 micro adjusts on there. Now this one is running the Seiko NH38, which is a true no-date movement, as there is no date on the dial here. So what do you say we wind this thing up, stick it on a Timegrapher, and see how it's running? This particular example has settled in at about plus 11 seconds per day. Perfectly fair and acceptable for a Seiko. 277, nice healthy amplitude. Again, very typical Seiko numbers across the board here. Very minimal beat error, nothing to worry about. Plus 11 seconds a day, I'll take it. I think that's a good runner. Going over the dimensions, we have a tapering case that I measured at 39 millimeters at its widest, 40 millimeters at the bezel. The lug to lug came in at 46.7 millimeters as I measured it, and it was 14 millimeters thick. It has 20 millimeter lug width. Going over some of the other specs, we are looking at a domed sapphire crystal with AR coating. We are using BGW9 lume, and oh, the lume, there is a ton of it. One of the best BGW9 applications I ever seen. We'll take a look at that in a second. It's running a Seiko NH38 movement, and it has 200 meters of water resistance. And on this OEM bracelet, size for my 7¼ inch wrist, it came in at 150 grams. You know, I really like these bracelet lengths. Nice and short, make it real easy to get a good fit, especially with only 3 micro adjusts. But besides being flat on the top and bottom, they have these little angles on the edges that just make it a little more visually interesting. And here's how it wears on my 7¼ inch wrist. I think it presents and feels very true to its 40 millimeter size. That 14 millimeter height is maybe a little misleading, as I never really thought of this as wearing tall. In fact, I was surprised when I measured that number. I think it's the lugs and the way they kind of sit close to the wrist. Really pleasure to wear this watch. All right, let's take a look at it side by side, some other watches. Let's start with the SPB 147, which is, I think, a half a millimeter larger at the bezel, 40.5. Smaller dial opening is going to present a little smaller, and it does wear a little smaller than the Shirahama does. I think a better comparison is maybe the SKX. Now, the Shirahama does wear smaller than the SKX, but not by a ton. I think you can see here these two kind of present the same with those offset crowns. Thickness is pretty similar as well. I also have the Adoxa here, another 40 millimeter with an offset crown. And this one wears probably larger than its size. I think it's also kind of a thick watch as well. I would say the best comparison of these three is the SKX. Namica wearing slightly smaller than that. All right, last thing. We got to check out this lume because it is bonkers.
Peep the lume.
And look at these things glow. And the lume on them is spectacular all over, but it is particularly impressive in the bezel insert. Those things just shine like flashlights, and I'm not even in complete dark here. Yeah, this is hands down the best BGW9 application I've ever seen. There you go, the Namica Shirahama. I'm a big fan of Japanese design, and this one is just done so well. It's subtle and fresh in all the right ways, but most importantly, it's just plain fun to wear. And as we all know, that trumps everything else. All right, big rats to Namica for the Kickstarter campaign. Keep an eye out for pre-orders on their site if you missed out. That should be coming up sometime soon. All right, before I let you guys go, sneaker check. Wearing my Fire Red Jordan 4s, and that's it. I'm out. If it's not too much trouble, please like, subscribe, and come back next time. Peace.